New year, new me, right? That's what everyone says. That's maybe what you have said to yourself. Now, what I want you to do is look back roughly 365 days to the beginning of 2022. Now, sure, there was still some COVID going around. There were still some other problems that we may not have right now, but likely you made some commitments. A better body, more money, better relationships, or something more specific within any of those areas. But I am sure if you're in this video right now, there were some things that you said to yourself that you were going to do. And unfortunately, if you're like most people, you didn't do most of them. Or you did a little bit in the beginning, maybe the first month, the second month, but likely you didn't do it until now, until this point. If you did, I want to congratulate you. And if you did that for your business, for your physique, or the pursuit of a better physique, relationships, congratulations. Now, but if you did for one, it is almost certain that you didn't do it for all. And what I want to touch on this video is for 2023, and since we are still in the month of January, it's coming to an end when I release this video, but I want to make sure you and myself as well get the most out of this year. Now, how we're going to do that is I'm going to share with you how I'm doing things, how you can also steal a bit of that for yourself. And we're going to start with a single focus point. Now, looking back for myself in the beginning of last year, I set way too many goals, moving in way too many different directions. And yes, I made progress, even you could call quite good progress, but not as much as I could have done if I narrowed down. If I just chose one or two things that I really want to get done, that I really want to become better at, then the progress would have been massive as far as those areas go, instead of being scattered through, here, there, another place, and just essentially making a bit of progress in a lot of different areas, but not making a lot of progress in just one area. So that's the first thing I'm doing. This one thing that I suggest to you. The best way that I found to do this is to essentially look at everything you have going around, the things that you, even if you have set no goal, are trying to achieve and that are, meaningful for you to achieve. Pick one or two, get really clear on what it is that you're trying to achieve, put a date on it, make it specific, and then forget about everything else. Just look at that, focus on that. All your attention must go to that, and the rest must be forgotten. Now, a lot of people, when I say this or when I tell them this, they say, oh, but aren't those other areas important too? Aren't all these other things meaningful to you as well? And while the answer is probably yes, they're not nearly as important as these other areas. And I know that if I'm going to start putting more focus on these, not as relevant areas, then the main things are going to suffer. And for everything in life, there's always a sacrifice that needs to be made. It's rarely the case that you can have everything. And because of that, you got to choose. And so you got to make sure that what you choose is what is meaningful to you. Step 2, hitting the right target. With a clear goal set, I want to ask you the following. Let's say I was trying to grow my back muscles. I wouldn't train my legs, right? Maybe I'll train them as well, but not for that purpose. Or if I'm trying to build a new business, I wouldn't just spend months and tons of money just, building a website, creating a logo, developing the ideas super in detail, but never even trying to sell anything to anyone or not ever sharing anything with the outside world. This is obviously when I point out in this case, but a lot of you do this approach without realizing it. You just focus on the wrong things, the things that are comfortable, the things that are easy, but not on the effort that will actually progress you forward. And a big reason for this is that type of effort usually is uncomfortable to deal with, especially if it's things that, you're putting yourself out there, that you're, risking failure. That's when it's harder. It's, for example, maybe you're trying to build your body, and instead of going to the gym and being more effective that way, maybe you're a bit shy, maybe you don't know, you've never been, you don't know what's going to happen. So you say to yourself, I'm just going to do body weight exercises. And they would still, give you some progress, but not nearly as much as if you went to the right place with the right information and put the right effort there. And so it's crucial that after you have your goal, you take the time to really look at, okay, this is what I'm trying to achieve. How am I going to get there? What are the priorities? What are the fundamental habits that are going to get me to where I want to go? Now, to get there, we're going to divide this into three, what I like to call 3 steps of the pyramid of habits, of things to do to get to where you want to go. The wider the base, the taller the pyramid can be. Now, this is the approach I'm taking. It's the approach I suggest you take as well. I saw this from Alex Hormozi in a recent video, and even though I knew some ideas, that's absolutely perfectly put the pyramid analogy, because you can't just expect to build a tiny foundation and go all the way up. Maybe you can get away with it for a little bit, but if you have a small foundation and you build up, the more you build up, the likelier it is that you're gonna fall, that everything's gonna crumble down because you didn't have a solid foundation. So the first step we have to do is build a solid foundation. And the way we're gonna approach this is by understanding the core fundamental habits like we were talking about. And first of all, getting those set, getting consistent with those, getting yourself doing those correctly, and really taking your time with them. Because even though you probably want fast success, even though I know, this is what I want as well. You want to see results right away. You want to work out your back one day, then next you'd have a massive back. But that's just not how the world works. For goals, especially meaningful goals, things that are, that most people are after, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take time. Otherwise, everyone would be rich, would have the perfect body, would have the perfect relationships, but that's not the case. It's quite the opposite. So the first step, like repeating myself a bit here, first step, you're going to identify what are these core habits, what are the core main things that even if I do nothing else, these are going to make me, or these are going to allow me to progress. So if this was at the gym, it would likely be something, eat a certain amount of calories per day or not above or below a certain amount of calories, work out a certain amount of times per week following this program, sleep or rest a certain amount of hours to make sure that my body can recover. And you would know if you did these three things, there's probably likely more, but just for the sake of the example, if you do these three things consistently and you keep reviewing, keep progressing in them, you're going to build an absolutely solid, strong foundation. It's inevitable. And once you do that, you could move to the next step. Now, before we do that, I just want to be very clear here that as when building a pyramid or any building, you can't start building from the middle because in the building, it's physically impossible. You have to start from the foundation, and only once that is set can you put something on top of it. So what I always suggest is whatever habits that you have identified as core, as fundamental, build the consistency at 100% for those first. So let's say you had these three habits I said. If you're just a beginner, start with one, be consistent with it for 2 weeks. Once you're fully consistent, add the next habit on top. And then when you're fully consistent with that, add the next one. And maybe it's going to take you 1 month, 2 months more. And you think to yourself, why don't I just start with all of them right away? Then I would, get there faster. But what you have to think about is that if this is something that you plan to do for the next 5 to 10 years, which for a lot of people, if it's business-wise, physical-wise, you are planning to do anyway, does it really matter if you take 1 to 2 months more in the beginning? If those are going to allow you to continue consistent and strong for the next years? Probably not. You'd take that trade-off any day. If I were to skip forward 10 years and told you, but in the beginning you just took 3 months extra, you wouldn't mind. But you do mind in the moment, because in the moment things are slow, especially when delaying like this. But keep this in mind. I suggest build the foundation first, and then we can move to the next step. Step number 2, iteration. After you have the solid foundation, it is important not to stagnate there, not to keep doing the same things over and over and over, never progressing, because if you do that, you are going to stagnate at some point. And maybe you see this with some people, that they're very consistent, especially in the gym, but they're stuck at a certain level, and they have been consistent, but they haven't been consistent with iterating. Iterating meaning just looking at what you've been doing and slightly improving upon it. Having a new iteration of what you are doing. This is absolutely critical. Once the foundation is set, this is, as we see from the pyramid, the absolutely crucial step to progress. Without this, maybe you'll get lucky and you'll kind of fall into the right things, but most likely than not, this is not going to happen. And as such, when I mean iteration, is essentially looking at what you're doing. First of all, looking at how consistent you're being, and really critically, having this conversation with yourself of, am I actually being 100% consistent? A lot of times it's easy to lie to ourselves. It's easy to say that we did when we didn't do, to do less than we should have, but assume we did all of it. And this is the first question you have to answer with yourself. If you can't answer because you haven't been tracking properly, then the first thing you have to do is actually go ahead and track strictly correctly and see where you're at. If then the results come back and you're not consistent, you're not fully consistent with these things, then the first step, or in this case, the second step, is going to be becoming consistent with those things. Now, it falls a bit outside the realm of this video, but I do have a course that helps you with this of going from creating the goal all the way to achieving it and all these steps in between. You can check the link below for that. We also have the community together with that, the Warrior's Path, I call it, but this will be the second step. Now, assuming you're consistent, assuming this is correctly, after that, number 3 is going to be, and I really like to ask this first, which is removing before adding. So you're just going to ask yourself, what am I currently doing that's pretty much just a waste of time and effort, that's not really providing decent or relevant results for what I'm doing? Now, this could be a wide variety of things. Maybe in the physical sense, it's not going to be as relevant. If it's in a business sense, it's definitely going to be relevant. Maybe a lot of things you're doing because you think they're correct, but when you look at them, they're producing no results, nor do they really have the possibility of producing future results. These are the things you're going to remove. Usually here are going to be things that you've implemented that really fall outside the core habits, things that maybe looked sexy or they were just the next kind of gold shiny object. And it is crucial that first of all, you remove these if they're not giving you any results, nor do you see the possibility of them giving you results. Now, after that is done comes a much more fun step, which is adding things or slightly changing things. And you're going to look at what you're doing, your workouts, your diet, your business plan, your marketing, your sales, and you're going to look at what can I change to provide me better results. And a good way to see, because if you just ask yourself, oh, what can I change? Like essentially you could change everything. But here's when I really suggest going to someone else, to an expert on that field, someone that either got the results you want or got other people to where you want, and you want to show them what you've been doing, showing them, the workouts, the diet, the business plan, all of that, and show to them what you've been doing, where you want to go, and ask them what here should be changed. What here am I doing that I could improve upon, that needs some tweaks and fixes. Now, it's much better to go when you're already doing things than in the beginning, because in the beginning, you're going to get general advice. You're just starting because, you don't even understand what you don't understand. Now, that would be what I suggest here. Now, if you don't have the money for that, if it's not possible, the next best thing is obviously you're going to have this critical sense with yourself of looking at things and understanding, oh, maybe this could be a bit better. Maybe this is not really providing the right results, but it could. Unlike the other things that we removed, these are things that actually could give you the right results, but maybe you just haven't cracked the code, or maybe some things just need a bit of change, a bit of improvement. And the best way to then solve that, if you don't have the money to, schedule an hour with an expert, is to go to their content of experts, books, podcasts, articles, etc., and kind of try and answer those questions yourself. But the best way is really to go to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And then it's going to be things that you could add, because once the foundation is set, is strong, and it's really become a habit, it's not so much of an effort for you to do anymore, then you can look into really giving yourself a boost in progress. If it's marketing, you're doing like Instagram, that's being pretty consistent, doing the posts, doing the stories, all that. Maybe now you can start looking at another platform, or just putting more content for the audience you already have, or creating a new product. You can look at things to do that are really not going to take away from what you're already doing. They're going to add, essentially. These are going to be the 4 steps I recommend. I'm going to list them here written so it's easier for you as well. But this is going to be really the second step we're focusing here. Now, before we move on to the next step, I want to be very clear here, really emphasize this point and say that if you just do these 2 things, understand the core habits, get very consistent, very good at them, and then keep iterating on them, adding things that are going to progress you and removing things that are just dragging you down, that will get you beyond any dream that you have. That will really push you to the goals that you probably set right now and further to, because a lot of times progress is exponential. You can't even see how far you'll go if you just stick with these things. Now, the last part is really more about allowing you to stick with this. I call it purpose, you can call it meaning, but it's really just about understanding why you want to achieve what you want to achieve. It's really getting to the core of why does this goal matter to me? Because if you understand that, that's what's going to allow you to keep pushing, especially in moments where, things go a bit down or when you're not seeing the results you'd like to see. You need to understand why you're doing it. Because if you understand why, then you're going to do it. If you don't understand why and things are not feeling good, things are not comfortable, you don't see a point behind it, you're not going to do it. We're human beings at the end of the day. And there's some things we can't trick ourselves with. Now, the best way to do this, it is simple. However, it is hard. It requires you sitting down with yourself and being very critical, not critical, but being very honest with yourself, being able to give answers that may not be too comfortable to give. And what you're going to take is whatever current goal that you have. Let's say right now you're trying to gain 5 pounds of muscle, lose 5 pounds of fat, for example. First of all, you take that and then you look, let's say 5-10 years in the future and say, what would be the dream version of this goal? Meaning, if I achieve this goal and then I set a new goal and I keep doing that for 10 years, what would be my dream scenario? What would I want to be? A business, finance, business, fitness, whatever the goal may be, you can do this exercise. And then when you have that, you're going to ask yourself, why do I want to achieve this? And likely the first answer you're going to get is something very vague, like, oh, because I want to feel better about myself, or because I want to look better. But then you're going to ask yourself, why? You're going to ask why and why and why again until you get to a point where you're just going in circles, where the answer is just pretty much the same answer you gave. But when you get to that point, and this is not something that usually is going to happen just right away for most people, but if you every month or two you do this exercise and you ask yourself the question, you're really going to get to the core of what first originally compelled you to go after this goal. Because usually any goal that we have usually starts running away from pain. We feel bad because we don't look good when we look in the mirror. We couldn't afford that dinner we wanted to go and that hurts. And that's initially, for most people, how the journey begins. But that's not how it's going to end, because at some point, you're not going to feel pain anymore. And then after that, you need something else to drive you forward. You need something else to keep pushing you forward. And if you don't understand why, maybe you're going to do some progress, but then you're going to stagnate there because there's no drive to keep pushing forward. So this is the last step. Then again, you don't need to wait until everything is done in this case to go ahead and do this, but you need to have some. I'd recommend first to just build a foundation, iterate a bit on it, and then maybe when you start losing a bit more steam, or when you want to push more, but you're not sure if you have the motivation and the desire, do this then. Then again, it's going to be a journey for you. It's going to be something that it's going to have a lot of ups and downs, as any journey is going to have. And the fun part is that a lot of times when you start getting to more the meaning, the purpose behind things, this can then impact how you're looking at the foundation, at the things you're doing, because it might change what you're actually after. Now, I don't want to dive too much deeper into that. I just wanted to share here with you what I'm doing, what I suggest you do. So to summarize, number one, you can identify, get very clear on what the main 1 to 2 goals are, and remove everything else. Once that is clear, you're going to prioritize, first of all, the core habits, the fundamental, foundational habits. Become very consistent with those, very good with those. Then you're going to start iterating on them, really reviewing what you did and how you can improve on it. And then finally, you're going to ask yourself, why am I after this? And really get to the core, to the meaning of what it is that you're after. And if you do this, then again, this is very simplified here, but this is, a process that will take years. If done well, it's going to take you the rest of your life, because you're just going to keep going and going and going. And that's the beauty of it. It's a never-ending game. Now, guys, if you enjoyed, I would really appreciate if you drop a like on the video. It really helps out to spread the message, spread the channel as well. And if you want to join our tighter community, the Warriors Path, where we're really going on this journey together, keeping each other accountable, motivating, also calling out when it needs to be, the link is going to be below. Any questions you have, I'm going to answer them in the Discord as soon as I see them. And I'll see you on the next video.